And I killed those men. I robbed them and I killed them as cold as ice. And I'd do it again too, and I know I'd kill another person.
Well, the only woman on Oklahoma's death row, one step closer to execution.
The execution of women has been far less common than that of men throughout history, but their stories are no less powerful.
As you said, there's a freedom in it. When I was forgiven.
We will look at the final moments of women who faced capital punishment around the globe. Their last words and final meals offer a glimpse into their mindset as they confronted death. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos became one of America's most notorious female serial killers, convicted of murdering 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. She claimed the killings were in self-defense against men who had raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute. Last meal. Wuornos declined a special last meal and instead had a cup of black coffee. Final words. Her final statement was both defiant and bizarre. "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." The morning of her execution, she also said, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back." Karla Faye Tucker.
Karla Faye Tucker's apparent last day began at 6 behind the walls of this unit of the Texas State Prison System.
In 1984, Karla Faye Tucker and her boyfriend broke into the home of Jerry Lynn Dean, killing both Dean and his companion Deborah Thornton with a pickaxe. Her case gained widespread attention because of her religious conversion in prison and the debate about executing women. Last meal. Tucker requested a banana, peach, and salad with either ranch or Italian dressing. Final words. "Yes, sir, I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. Baby, I love you. Ron, give Peggy a hug for me. Everybody has been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I am going to be face to face with Jesus now. Warden Baggett, thank all of you so much. You have been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I will see you all when you get there. I will wait for you." Ruth Ellis.
The press said she wept and cried when she'd gone to the scaffold.
Ruth Ellis was the last woman to be executed in the United Kingdom. In 1955, she was hanged for the murder of her lover, David Blakely, outside a pub in London. Last meal. There's no specific record of her last meal, as the British prison system didn't typically offer special last meals. Final words. Ellis reportedly didn't make a final statement. She faced her execution with remarkable composure, reportedly saying to the executioner, Albert Pierrepoint, "I'm ready," when he came to collect her. Mary Surratt. Mary Surratt was the first woman executed by the United States federal government. She was convicted of conspiracy in the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln in 1865, though many questioned her guilt. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. On the scaffold, she reportedly said, "Please don't let me fall," referring to her fear of the drop from the gallows. Some accounts claim her last words were actually directed to a boarding house resident. "Take care of Annie," referring to her daughter. Ethel Rosenberg. Ethel Rosenberg and her husband Julius were executed in 1953 after being convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage for the Soviet Union, particularly in relation to passing nuclear secrets. Last meal. There's no specific record of her last meal. Final words. Ethel Rosenberg did not make a public final statement, but in her last letter to her children, she wrote, "Always remember that we were innocent and could not wrong our conscience." Amelia Dyer. Known as the Reading Baby Farmer, Amelia Dyer was one of Britain's most prolific serial killers, murdering infants in her care in the late 19th century. She may have killed as many as 400 babies over a 20-year period. Last meal. Historical records don't document her final meal. Final words. As she approached the gallows, she reportedly said, "I have nothing to say except that I am innocent." Myra Hindley.
Myra Hindley, probably the most hated woman in Britain, is dead.
Though Myra Hindley was not executed, as the UK had abolished capital punishment by the time of her conviction, she was one of Britain's most notorious female criminals, involved in the Moors murders with her partner Ian Brady. I include her here because her case is often discussed in the context of women who might have faced execution in earlier times. Hindley died in prison in 2002 of respiratory failure. Last meal. As she died of natural causes, there was no last meal. Final words. There is no record of any significant last words from Hindley. She maintained that she had reformed during her decades in prison. Wanda Jean Allen. Wanda Jean Allen was executed in Oklahoma in 2001 for the murder of her girlfriend, Gloria Leathers. She was the first black woman to be executed in the United States since the resumption of executions in 1977. Last meal. Allen requested a bag of chips as her last meal. Final words, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." She also said, "I love everybody. Keep the victory. I love you all." Velma Barfield.
Isolation from everybody that I had been with for almost 6 years.
Known as the death row grandmother, Velma Barfield was executed in 1984 in North Carolina for poisoning her boyfriend with arsenic. She later confessed to killing 3 other people, including her mother. Last meal, Barfield requested a bag of cheese doodles and a Coca-Cola. Final words. Before her execution, she said, "I want to say that I am sorry for all the hurt that I have caused. I know that everybody has gone through a lot of pain, all the families connected, and I am sorry." Lisa Montgomery.
Lisa Montgomery was sentenced to death by lethal injection, and that's after she was convicted of killing a pregnant woman and cutting out her baby.
Lisa Montgomery was executed by the federal government in January 2021. The first woman executed by the federal government in nearly 70 years. She was convicted of killing a pregnant woman and cutting the baby from her womb. Last meal. Details of her last meal were not publicly released. Final words. Montgomery did not give a final statement. Her attorneys argued until the end that she suffered from severe mental illness as a result of horrific abuse throughout her life. Teresa Lewis.
And convicted for the 2 hired killings of her husband and stepson, Teresa Lewis is set to die on Virginia's death row.
Teresa Lewis was executed in Virginia in 2010 for arranging the murders of her husband and stepson for insurance money. She was the first woman executed in Virginia since 1912. Last meal. Lewis requested fried chicken, sweet peas with butter, apple pie, and a Dr. Pepper. Final words. I just want Kathy to know that I love you and I'm very sorry. Christina Walters. Christina Walters was sentenced to death in North Carolina for her role as the leader in the gang-related kidnapping and murder of 2 women and the attempted murder of a third in 1998. While she remains on death row, her case represents one of the few women currently facing execution in the United States. As she has not been executed, there is no information about her last meal or final words. Judy Buenoano, known as the Black Widow, Judy Buenoano was executed in Florida in 1998 for the murder of her husband. She was also convicted of drowning her son and attempting to murder her fiancé. Last meal, Buenoano requested asparagus, strawberries, broccoli, tomatoes, and hot tea. Final words. She had no final statement but nodded and mouthed "I love you" to her attorneys and 2 ministers before her execution. Betty Lou Beets. Betty Lou Beets was executed in Texas in 2000 for the murder of her 5th husband. Prosecutors alleged she killed him for insurance money. Last meal, Beats declined a special last meal. Final words, she made no final statement. Frances Newton was executed in Texas in 2005 for the murders of her husband and 2 children, allegedly to collect insurance money. She maintained her innocence until her death. Last meal, Newton declined a special last meal. Final words, I love all of you, I'm innocent. Take care of yourselves, may God bless you all. Linda Lyon Block and her common-law husband, George Sibley, were executed for the 1993 murder of a police officer in Alabama. They were self-proclaimed sovereign citizens who rejected government authority. Last meal, Block declined a special last meal. Final words, she made no final statement, maintaining her stance of not recognizing the authority of the court that sentenced her. Kelly Gissendaner.
We're now learning that Kelly Gissendaner, she's the first woman in death row in 70 years in the state of Georgia.
Kelly Gissendaner was executed in Georgia in 2015 for orchestrating the murder of her husband in 1997. She underwent a religious transformation in prison and became a theologian, mentoring other inmates. Last meal, Gissendaner requested cornbread, buttermilk, 2 cheeseburgers, 2 large orders of fries, cherry vanilla ice cream, popcorn, and lemonade. Final words. She apologized to the family of her victim, saying, I'm sorry. I just want to tell my kids that I love them and I'm proud of them. She also sang Amazing Grace as the lethal injection was administered. Margie Velma Barfield, already mentioned above as Velma Barfield. Her full name was Margie Velma Barfield. She was the first woman executed in the United States after the reinstatement of capital punishment in 1976. Leonarda Cianciulli. Known as the soap maker of Correggio, Leonarda Cianciulli was an Italian serial killer who murdered 3 women between 1939 and 1940, then turned their bodies into soap and tea cakes. While she was sentenced to 30 years in prison rather than death, her case is one of the most notorious involving a female killer. She died in a criminal asylum in 1970. Delphine LaLaurie. Delphine LaLaurie was a New Orleans socialite in the early 19th century who became notorious for the torture and murder of slaves in her household. While she was never executed, she fled to France after her crimes were discovered. Her case represents one of the most horrific examples of female cruelty in American history. Charlotte Corday. Charlotte Corday was executed by guillotine in 1793 during the French Revolution for the assassination of Jacobin leader Jean-Paul Marat, whom she blamed for the September massacres. Last meal, historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. Before her execution, she reportedly said, I killed 1 man to save 100,000. Marie Antoinette. The Queen of France was executed by guillotine in 1793 during the French Revolution. Last meal, historical accounts suggest she refused breakfast on the morning of her execution and was only given a cup of hot chocolate. Final words. Her last words are often reported to be, Pardonnez-moi, monsieur, je ne l'ai pas fait exprès. Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose. After accidentally stepping on the executioner's foot as she approached the guillotine. Anne Boleyn. The second wife of King Henry VIII of England was executed by beheading in 1536 on charges of adultery, incest, and treason. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. Before her execution, she said, Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law, and by the law, I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that whereof I am accused and condemned to die, but I pray God save the king and send him long to reign over you, for a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. And to me he was ever a good, a gentle, and sovereign lord. Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary Stuart was executed by beheading in 1587 after being convicted of plotting to assassinate Queen Elizabeth I of England. Last meal, historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. Her final prayer in Latin was, In manus tuas, Domine, commendo spiritum meum. Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. Catherine Howard. The fifth wife of King Henry VIII of England was executed by beheading in 1542 on charges of adultery. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. The night before her execution, she reportedly asked for the block to be brought to her so that she could practice placing her head upon it. Her last words were reported to be, I die a queen, but I would rather have died the wife of Culpeper, referring to her alleged lover. Lady Jane Grey. Known as the 9 Days Queen, Lady Jane Grey was executed in 1554 after being deposed by Mary I. She was just 16 or 17 years old. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. On the scaffold she said, Good people, I am come hither to die, and by a law I am condemned to the same. The fact indeed against the Queen's Highness was unlawful, and the consenting thereunto by me. But touching the procurement and desire thereof by me or on my behalf, I do wash my hands thereof in innocency, before God and the face of you, good Christian people, this day. Jeanne d'Arc. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in 1431 after being convicted of heresy. She was later canonized as a Roman Catholic saint. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. As the flames rose around her, witnesses reported that she cried out, Jesus! 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 Her last word was reportedly Jesus. Mata Hari. Margarita Geertruida MacLeod, better known by her stage name Mata Hari, was executed by firing squad in France in 1917 after being convicted of spying for Germany during World War I. Many historians now question whether she was actually guilty. Last meal. Historical records don't specify her last meal. Final words. She reportedly refused a blindfold and blew a kiss to the firing squad, saying, Merci, monsieur. As we reflect on these stories, we might ask ourselves what we would say, what we would eat if faced with our own mortality in such stark terms. And perhaps in that reflection, we might find a deeper understanding of our own humanity and the complex moral questions surrounding justice, punishment, and redemption.